Hello everyone and welcome to Tips and Stories. My name is Elizabeth and in today's video I will be discussing more of my holiday reads. Last week I had such a fun time making my holiday middle grade video, so if you haven't seen it, please check it out below. But in today's video I wanted to talk more about classics, more about holiday short stories, and even some really funny books. So grab your favorite festive beverage and join me as we discuss these terrific reads. The first group of books that I bought that I wanted to share with you today are some really beautiful editions by the graphic artist Sanna Annukka. And these are just three beautiful editions of holiday stories that we all know and love. The first is The Snow Queen, The Nutcracker, and The Fir Tree. So I'll show you them in more detail. But Sanna Annukka is a Finnish graphic artist, and she just has very beautiful geometric designs and patterns. She designs a lot of fabric and a lot of marketing and merchandising campaigns. So she's a very highbrow, high-level artist. And then this series, she designed some Christmas picture books, and of course I had to have them. So this first one is The Snow Queen, and it's probably the most popular because of Frozen. They are naked hardbacks that kind of have a cloth covering. Here is the back, and I'll try to show you the end papers and some of the artwork as well. So here is the end papers of the Snow Queen, so you can see how she designs patterns. And just look at her illustrations, so beautiful. And because she's from Finland and Hans Christian Andersen was from Denmark, she is in that Nordic tradition, which I think he would have really liked. So the artwork really fits the stories too. And it's so stunning. Oh my goodness. And I think this would be even a nice one to get for children too. So don't be intimidated about buying these books for kids, especially The Snow Queen, since Frozen is so popular. The next one I had never even heard of until I saw this edition. Shame on me, and that's The Fir Tree by Hans Christian Andersen. So there is the front, there's the back, and this one is the shortest in the collection, so the best one for kids, I think. There's the end papers. There's the tree out in the woods. Oh, her designs are so beautiful. Oh, I love them. The patterns in her artwork, so stunning. And then this is my favorite page, the ornaments for the Christmas tree. And then the last one is the longest one, and that is The Nutcracker. The Nutcracker is by E.T.A. Hoffmann. There's the front cover, the back cover. I probably should have taken the sticker off. I love the end papers in the Nutcracker, especially the mice and the candy canes. So beautiful. And this one is the longest in length, so I think this would be best for older children. But I'm sure younger kids would still enjoy looking at the pictures. I know I would have if I was little. And there you are. And I'm really excited about these editions because I have not actually read any of these stories, so it will just be really fun. I'll probably pick one this year and then just read one every year. But I love these editions. They're so pretty. The next group of books I have for you are some more short story collections, and the first one I have is Christmas Stories by Everyman's Library. This is a great collection for fans of classics, and it has some very high-level writers in here. So I think whether you write just, pop fiction or literary fiction, it seems like every author has a Christmas story. And so it's funny to read the Christmas stories of some of these very famous authors in here. So I'll go through the list very quickly. We have Charles Dickens. This story is from the Pickwick Papers. We have Nikolai Gogol, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. That's a funny story. The Blue Carbuncle. It's about a diamond that gets stuck in a goose. We've got one from Anthony Trollope, Christmas at Thompson Hall. That is really funny. Leo Tolstoy, Willa Carter. There's a really beautiful one called Christmas by Vladimir Nabokov, and he wrote Lolita, and that is just a beautiful story about a father that's lost his son. So I've never wanted to read Lolita, but based on that short story and his writing, now I do. We've got Bella Fleece Gave a Party by Evelyn Waugh, and that one's really funny, and then it's also really depressing. So you know Evelyn Waugh. There's a really good one by John Cheever, Christmas is a Sad Season for the Poor. I think that's my favorite in this collection. It's about this lonely elevator operator in New York City, and he's really depressed at the beginning because no one is giving him a Christmas present. He's all by himself, but he lives in this really lush budget apartment building with all these millionaires, and they feel sorry for him. So they're all inviting him over for Christmas dinner. They're all giving him like these expensive bottles of wine and Christmas presents. And so by the end of the story, he is just completely wasted because he's had about like 5 Christmas dinners, and it's so funny. I love that story. And then the last one that I wanted to mention was A Christmas Memory by Truman Capote, which I'll talk about in more detail. So just an excellent collection for fans of classics. The next collection that I'd like to talk about is Christmas with Anne by L.M. Montgomery. L.M. Montgomery is my all-time favorite writer, and this is a short story collection featuring some holiday stories by L.M. Montgomery. And because she's such a great cozy writer, you know she has some excellent holiday stories. And this collection features 2 stories from the Anne of Green Gables novels. It features Anne's first Christmas when she gets her Christmas dress from Matthew with the puffed sleeves. And then it also features my favorite story from Anne of Windy Poplars, which is about Catherine Brooke, who is Anne's bitter enemy at the school where they teach, and Catherine is this older spinsterish lady, and she and Anne just butt heads. And so one Christmas season, Anne is just frustrated, and she says, "Look, Catherine, please come home with me to Green Gables. Let's sort this out. Let's try to be friends." And it's such a beautiful story about Catherine coming out of her shell, and it reminds me that it's never too late to be the person you might have been. So I really enjoy that story. Some other favorites from this one are Aunt Cyrilla's Christmas Basket. It's about a group of people who get stranded on a train and they can't go home for Christmas, so they just have this jolly Christmas on this train because of Aunt Cyrilla, and she has all this food and gifts and toys and this big huge Christmas basket. There's another story that I really love in this collection. It's called A Christmas Inspiration. It's about a group of girls that all live together at this boarding house, and they can't go home for Christmas for some reason. They're all stuck at the boarding house, and so they're feeling really sorry for themselves. But then one of the girls, Jean, she has the idea of creating Christmas for their next door neighbor, this very lonely old woman. And so all the girls get really excited and they make presents for this little old lady, and they just have the best Christmas. And it's very similar to the scene in Little Women when the girls create Christmas for the Hummels. So Jean creates a Christmas poem, and then one of the girls is an artist, and then one of the girls is a foodie, so she gets all the food. So I really love A Christmas Inspiration. The next short story that I'd like to share with you is A Christmas Memory by Truman Capote. And I really wanted to highlight this story in particular because it's my all-time favorite Christmas story. I am not a huge fan of Truman Capote. I've never read In Cold Blood. I've never read Breakfast at Tiffany's, but this story is gorgeous. And every time I read it, I kind of think that he might have written To Kill a Mockingbird because it's so similar to Kill a Mockingbird. It's about a child's version of events. There's a very quirky adult in this story, just like Boo Radley. So who knows? Maybe he helped Harper Lee write To Kill a Mockingbird. Who knows? But if you're unfamiliar with this story, it's so beautiful. Oh, it makes me cry every year. It's about a little boy named Buddy, and him and his friend, his special friend, who is this older woman. I think she's an aunt or a cousin of his. One Christmas, they just get up, they go get the Christmas tree, they have their dog Queenie with them, and then his friend says, "It's fruitcake weather, we need to make fruitcake." And so they gather up all their money and resources, and they make all these fruitcakes for the town that they live in. They even send one to the President of the United States at the White House. And it's just a beautiful story because while Buddy is growing up, his friend is staying exactly the same because she's a little special, she's a little different. And oh my gosh, I love this story so much. So if you have not read The Christmas Memory, I highly recommend it. Speaking of childhood Christmas stories, this book I am ashamed I have not read yet, and every year I mean to read it, and every year I forget about it, and that is A Child's Christmas in Wales by Dylan Thomas. And I don't know what it is. I have a block against this story, but I got a really nice edition at the library this year. It has some great illustrations. I'll show you a couple. So I'm hoping that I can get to it this year. It sounds very similar to Cider with Rosie, which I read this year, which is about an older man revisiting his childhood and all the quirky people that lived in his village. So I think A Child's Christmas in Wales is kind of similar to Cider with Rosie. It'll be interesting to read this one this year as well. And speaking of some funny Christmas stories, I have Holidays on Ice by David Sedaris. So David Sedaris, of course, is an excellent novelist. He writes these humorous essays, and I haven't really read much by him, but I really like his personality, his sense of humor whenever he's giving talks and doing public events and things like that. So this book is a collection of holiday stories. Most of them are Christmassy, but a few of them are, Halloween stories, Easter stories, Thanksgiving stories. So the whole gamut of holidays. And the first story I read this morning, and I absolutely loved it. It was so funny. It's called The Santaland Diaries, and it's about his experience as a Christmas elf one year working at Macy's and what it was like to be a Christmas elf in the toy department, working with all these kids and all these parents. And it's so hilarious because he just gives you the perspective of what it's like to be an elf, what the training involves, what the pay involves. And he's really embarrassed because he's just down now on his luck and he had to take any job he could get. And so most of these people are between jobs too. So the other Christmas elves are actors and waiters and waitresses and things like that. So they're all very eccentric characters. And then he talks about the Santa Clauses too, because there's a whole group of Santa Clauses that work at Macy's, and so he talks about which ones he likes, which ones he hates, and it even gets into like the different races of the Santa Clauses too, which is interesting. And then he talks about the kids and just how spoiled the kids are, and then how crazy the parents are. And so he just points out all the hypocrisy in the holiday season. So I really, really enjoyed that story, and I can't wait to read more in this book. So Holidays on Ice by David Sedaris. Now moving on to some more full-length novels. The first one I wanted to talk about was, of course, The Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. And I think there's two schools of thought with this story. There's people like me that have never read it before because it's such a part of our collective consciousness. I think so many of us think that we know the story already because we've seen all the movies. Yes, Muppet Christmas Carol is my favorite, as is Ebby with Susan Lucci. But I read this story for the first time last year and I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed getting into the source material ever since I've been discovering Charles Dickens. And it's so funny. His writing is so great. And you get, some perspective into the story when you see the context of the original. My favorite line in this book still has to be, "There's more of the gravy than the grave about you." So great. And I highly encourage anyone that has not read it, because I know some people read it every year, but if you have not read it, give it a chance because it's excellent. There's a reason it's a classic. My Barnes & Noble edition too has two more short stories, The Chimes and The Cricket on the Hearth. So hopefully I can get to those stories this year. Speaking of A Christmas Carol, the next book that I wanted to share with you is Silas Marner by George Eliot. And it's been a while since I read a George Eliot, and I thought this one would be really nice for the holidays. It's not necessarily a holiday story. In fact, I think George Eliot just says very briefly, one holiday season, one Christmas season. That's when the story takes place, but it fits this time of year perfectly, and it's very similar to The Christmas Carol. It's about a man named Silas Marner, and he's lonely, he's old, he's gone through some difficulties in his life, so he really mistrusts people, and he's lost his faith in God, and so he's become a recluse, and all he does is he's a weaver in this small town, and all he does is work and then just count his gold at night. And the gold gold is not even useful to him as money, as a sense of currency. It's just more valuable to him as an object, as a indicator of all the work he's done over the years. So that's all he's into, is this gold. And then one season it's stolen, and he just loses his entire identity because it was all wrapped up in how much money he had. And it's really interesting because they tell you the story of the thief as well, why the thief stole the gold, what their life was like. And Silas Marner just goes insane. He goes nuts, and he just tries to get all the townspeople to work together and help him find his money. But instead of finding the money, a little girl shows up on his doorstep one night, and he ends up having to take care of her, and it takes his mind off his troubles taking care of this little child. So much so that he falls in love with her, and it gets sad when the child is almost taken away from him. So I haven't quite gotten to that section yet, but so far I am loving it. George Eliot's writing is just so beautiful. And I really think this would be a great one for fans of The Christmas Carol, because it's teaching those similar themes that money isn't everything, relationships are the most important thing in life. So I really am enjoying Silas Marner by George Eliot. Another fun book for the holidays, and this book does not have a pretty picture on it. Insert Virago Modern Classic here, and that is High Rising by Angela Thirkell. So this one is a library copy, so it has a really nice smell, but I really enjoy Angela Thirkell. What I tell people about her is that she's like a girl version of P.G. Wodehouse. It's the same thing as P.G. Wodehouse, comedy of manners, set between the wars, World War I, World War II, set in the English aristocracy. It's really funny, her books. And they're all set in this fictional county, Barchester, which she borrows from Anthony Trollope from the Barchester Chronicles. So it's really interesting because, like Anthony Trollope, each book is about a different character, but then the other characters show up in all the books. So it's really interesting. And I've liked some of her books, and then some I haven't liked. This one is set during the winter though. So far I have read Wild Strawberries, August Folly, and The Brandons, and those three books were set during the summer. So it'll be interesting to read a wintry Angela Thirkell. And I think this one takes place during the holidays, if you can judge by that cover, because I love that cover. I love the Virago editions, and I want to collect every single one. So I'm really looking forward to High Rising by Angela Thirkell. Another book that I've heard is a very funny read, and that is An Elderly Lady is Up to No Good by Helene Tursten. And I had every intention of just checking this book out from the library, and then I saw it at the bookstore, and it is so cute. It's basically got a cover of a cross-stitch pattern on the front with skull and bones, and it's so small, it's so tiny. It's such a tiny little book. Here it is next to a regular size book. So it's even smaller than a mass market paperback. So I knew I had to buy it, not just check it out from the library. But the reason I got it was because it's supposed to be a very funny story and very sarcastic. So I know a lot of these holiday stories can just be a bit much, and sometimes you need something to just take the edge off, like David Sedaris. And this one is about a little old lady that is a serial killer. So it sounds hilarious. It's supposed to be like a cozy mystery, but you're just getting the perspective of the killer. And her name is Maud. She's 88 years old. She lives in Sweden in her apartment. And if she gets into a fight with someone, they disappear because she kills them. So that sounds hilarious because so many of us have neighbors, right, that we just wish we could just kill, that they would just disappear. So I think this one's going to be a really fun, and there is, I think, at least one story that's set during Christmas. So that's why I am including it in this list. Cannot wait to get to this one. And the last one I have to share with you is Skipping Christmas by John Grisham. And most of you probably are familiar with the story based on the movie Christmas with the Cranks, but I had never seen the movie, and I read the book last year, and I really enjoyed it. And it was surprising because when I think of John Grisham, I think of, A Time to Kill and all these really famous crime books. And this is just a funny, hilarious little Christmas story, and I really liked the book better than the movie. Tim Allen, Jamie Lee Curtis, they're amazing. But there's something about the book, just his writing style, his deadpan sense of humor, that I enjoyed much more than the movie. So if you haven't read the book, I encourage you to check it out. If you're unfamiliar with either the movie or the story, it's about Luther and Nora Crank, and their daughter has gone to the Peace Corps this year, so they just don't want to have Christmas. They're not feeling it because their daughter's gone and they're sad. And so Luther, he calculates how much Christmas has cost him over the years between the gifts and the parties and the donations and the decorations, and he decides to just skip it this year and spend all the money on a Caribbean cruise and just take his mind off his daughter, who he's missing like crazy. And so the whole book is hilarious because, you know, Luther is trying to do this, but everyone is like thinking he's nuts. Like, what? Like, you're not doing decorations? What? You're not going to the Christmas party? What? You're not donating to the Boy Scouts this year? So it's just so funny. And you just feel sorry for Luther. Like, good God, all the man wants to do is go on a cruise. Let him. So I really enjoy this book, Skipping Christmas by John Grisham. Thank you everyone for joining me for my holiday TBR. I am so excited about all of these books. They are just so great. I don't know which one to pick up first, so I'll probably save some for next year, but once again, I like having as many options as I can. So thank you for joining me everyone. Happy holidays and have a great day.